So you built a 5-inch drone and now you're thinking, gee, I want a 3-inch? Well, we've got a pre-built one right here, so let's check it out. G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today, well, we're going to be checking out this little thing, and look, I've got to be straight up, it's got a really stupid name. It's like the XJB 145, no joke, it's like a ridiculous name. Go check it out in the description down below. We're going to shorten it and just call it the XJB, but pretty much what this is, if you've got a 5-inch racer out there and you want something a little bit different, we're going to be checking out this little one, and it's a 3-inch brushless FPV racing drone. It looks pretty awesome, so what we're going to be doing, we're going to be sticking it on the bench, breaking it down. This is a 2-part review, breaking it down, sort of having a quick squeeze, all its components and all those sorts of things, and then we're going to be taking it out, ripping it around in the part 2 video and sort of showing you guys some flight footage. So let's waste no time, stick it on the bench and get started. Righty, so here it is on the bench, and I guess as a bit of an overview, it's a little 3-inch racer, and I think it's designed for those people who want something a little bit smaller, a little bit less intimidating, but you still get the full FPV racing experience, because don't be fooled, just because it's 3-inch doesn't mean this thing isn't going to be an absolute rocket, because I've seen some 3-inches in the past absolutely punch a hole in the sky. So this thing, it should go very, very quick, and it can take a 4S battery as well, so it should definitely rip. Now, the first things first, what we should do, let's stick it on the scales, find out how much it's going to weigh. So I've got my scales here, let's turn them on, tear them off, and it's coming in at 132 grams, so very, very light. And this might be a great option for those people in there if you're worried about the 250 gram limit. Put a battery with this bad boy, it's not going to be too heavy. You're going to be well under that, so you can fly around, and for a lot of places like in Canada and stuff, you know, that's going to be a godsend. Now, as a bit of an example, I've got this little battery here. This is probably what the sort of size that I'd run on. It's a 600 milliamp 4S battery, so all up it's coming in at 207 grams, so definitely well under the 250 gram limit. You know, we've still got to put a receiver in here, but there's no way that receiver is going to be coming in at 40 grams. Anyway, let's take that off to the side. It's also probably worth mentioning that, look, this thing's not going to run a GoPro. You might be able to fit one in that looks like you can put a little action camera in here, but trust me, that's not what this is designed for. You put a GoPro on this, it's going to feel very, very sluggish. Even a 4-inch I don't think really likes a GoPro. Putting it on a 3-inch, I have seen it done, but it doesn't fly around nearly as well. This thing's going to be much more nimble, much more suited to just getting some FPV action without the GoPro. Anyway, what we should do for the rest of this review, we're going to jump in, we're going to look at some of its components, and we're sort of going to talk about its design, the quality of how it goes together, the pros and cons and all that sort of jazz. Anyway, so let's jump in, and we're going to start at the outside in and have a look at the props. Now, we always start with the props because they seem to be the most annoying. I can't wait to take them off. It makes filming a lot easier, but they're pretty much just clones of the Rotor X sort of tri-blades to the 30-45s there. Not too much innovation, anything like that. A pretty standard prop, pretty good prop. I'm a big fan of them. I don't know how robust these ones are going to be. The Rotor X ones I've found have held up quite well in the past, but one thing to mention, you don't get any spares, so that's a massive shame. I know if you're going to get one of these, fair enough in a big 5-inch, if you don't get many spares, because a lot of people tend to have 5-inch props, but if you're getting a little 3-inch, make sure you order some little 3-inch props. I'll try and find some links down below to some spare ones, but yeah, bit of a shame. Just one extra set would have helped this one out, I think, a little bit. Anyway, let's take these off and then continue with the review. Alrighty, so flipping it over, we're going to start with the base plate. It's a 3mm base plate. It's designed to sort of run your 3-inch style motors, so whether that be the 13s or your 1407s, all that sort of jazz. I must say it's pretty robust, but I don't think this thing's going to be breaking anytime soon, because that's one of the beauties. Maybe if you smashed really hard into like some concrete or a road or something like that, but that could be said for any frame. But the beauty of these little light quads, because it's so light, it's not going to have too much, I guess, inertia or momentum when it hits the ground, and it should just bounce right back, because if you've got a big heavy quad, they tend to break the arms a lot more, but I think this thing's going to be perfectly fine. Now, I've zoomed in on the motors a little bit here. I'll flash a picture on the screen, but these are just some sort of the same sort of brand, HDL Tech branded flame motors. They're 1407, 3600 kV, and these things on a 4S, if it's got a smooth tune in it, we'll have to wait till the part 2, if it's got a smooth tune, this thing should absolutely rip, because that's a pretty good kV combined with a 4S. It's going to be very, very quick. Now, something that's a little bit different, you can see on this one, there's no ESCs on the arm, which used to be the case with a lot of builds, but nowadays everything seems to be moving to some 4-in-1 ESCs, which is exactly what we've got in the middle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to unscrew this, because I'm going to take this little top canopy off, and then I'm going to zoom in, talk about the internal components a little bit more. Alrighty, so I've taken the top off, and speaking of that ESC on the bottom, I'm going to flash some pictures UAVfutures on the screen. You can see we've got our little XT30, that's pretty much directly soldered up to our ESCs in the bottom. They're rocking D-Shot, they're 28 amp ESCs with a 35 amp burst rating. So look, no problems whatsoever on a 4S, because look, it might be pumping out, it might be really pushing out the speed, but because the props are so little, I don't think the amp draw is going to come anywhere near to burning those little bad boys out. Then sitting directly on top of that, we've got our little F4 fly control, and I think that's one of the stars of the show. Super tiny. It's an F4 board, which is pretty much the standard that the gold standard that everybody's using. We've moved up from the F3 board, and one cool thing, this tiny little one, it's rocking the Betaflight OSD, so you should be able to get like your flight times, your voltage, all that sort of jazz when you're flying around flashed onto your FPV screen, so you can monitor the progress of your quad as you're actually flying it. And then on the top, what we've got here, time to move on to the FPV section of things. Now this VTX on the top here, it offers a few more bells and whistles. So this one's even got access to the high and low bands, all that sort of stuff. You get this little instruction manual here. You can see a ton of different channels. You can change the power output as well, so whether it be 25, 100, 250 milliwatts, all that sort of jazz. And all you have to do, there's a little button that you have to press to cycle through those. It's just on the side just here, so you've just got to press that. It's nice that it's actually on the side, so that means you're not going to have to take the top off or anything like that, but it is going to be a little bit hard maybe to read the dial, because you do have that dial on the top to tell you exactly what channel you're on, but it's going to be a bit of a pain if you've got this on here to try and figure out exactly what that's on. So it's not too visible, might not be a problem to some people, but if you're changing channels all the time, that part might be a little bit irritating. Now something that's also worth mentioning, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the quality, my pigtail right here, because look, you do get this little pigtail that's going to clip on like that. It's just a little whip antenna. Mine was actually off, so I'm going to put some hot glue on here, but if you had to fire this thing up with a battery without sort of opening up and double checking that, I think you might have fried your VTX. So that part is a little bit scary. We'll talk about the quality, but that's definitely a bit of a no-no. So if you're going to get one of these, double check that you've got your VTX antenna secured on there. And then at the front, what we've got, this is a 2.3mm, 120 degree field of view little micro FPV camera. It's sort of after the RunCam Mini style, all that sort of jazz, but it's also not coated with any waterproof coating or anything like that. So I know the expensive RunCams, they do have that feature. I'm not sure how the reliability, I guess, in terms of hard crashes, all that sort of stuff is going to go, but overall, look, it does what it's meant to do. It's a tiny little micro, and it fits in there quite nicely. So you can see it's also held in there by these two little plates. Pretty easy to work on, nice little secure quad. If we look towards the back, this is one part, and thank goodness they included this, because I think I'll flash some more pictures. You've got your LEDs, which can change channels, change colors, all that sort of jazz, but of course we've got a buzzer on there. So I've seen some little micros that don't have a buzzer, and trust me, they're an absolute must, because if you lose this thing in long grass or something, you're going to need a buzzer to find it. It's a nice bright color, but these things, they can hide so well. Now if I flip it over, there's just some little extras to talk about, like I like this little battery pad here. That's going to stop our battery from sliding around. This one didn't come with a battery. I'll see if there's any more options. I'll put some more, maybe some links to some of those batteries down below. I don't like this velcro strap. This style really annoys me. You can't tighten these very well whatsoever. Even when you thread these down, I find this style to be, you know, just a massive pain, to be honest. And then on the top, the last part I want to talk about right here, you've got, I'm going to be ending up taking this off, you've got this little sort of GoPro holder, but look, it's not designed for that whatsoever. It's got that sort of angle, but you're not going to really be having very much fun if you're putting a GoPro on there, in my opinion. So I'm going to be taking that off. It simply unscrews right here, and then I might be able to save a few more grams. Now something that's worth mentioning, you do need to put your own receiver in here, so I'm going to be wiring that up. You've got plenty of room if you just want to sit it in the middle there. That's what I'm going to be doing, and we're going to be having a pretty nice little build. Now in terms of the design, actually I'm a bit of a fan, because look, it's pretty robust. I like the motors that they've got in there, super small, really lightweight. I think it's going to be a little rocket, a little pocket rocket when we take it out, rip it around, and overall, look, I think they've done a good job. The quality, on the other hand, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, I'm not the biggest fan of. The only part I'd probably change is if your design choice is having a GoPro holder on the top, I don't know how well that's going to be. So look, it's a nice little extra, but really, I don't think it's going to be doing any favors to this frame. You know, and I think they're really designing after people who just want a 3-inch little micro. They want something that's going to work well. Well, hopefully it works. We'll have to check that out in the part 2. But, you know, just something they can take out of the box, rip around, have a good time with, still get that FPV sort of feel, which this is definitely going to offer with all the components in here. Still get that racer sort of feel, but on a much smaller little scale. Now in terms of the quality, look, it's probably like a 5.5, a 6 out of 10. I have definitely seen better. Some of the solder joints are shiny, but other ones are a little bit sketchy, and things like this little FPV sort of antenna clipping off, all that sort of jazz, those parts are a little bit worrying, because that's the last thing. If that came off, you fried your board, well, you're out of luck and you're also out of money. Now, if you do pick one of these up, definitely put some Loctite on your screws, because even though they are tight in there, they're not Loctited, and as you fly around, you're going to notice that you're probably going to lose some of those screws in vibration, and then a motor comes off. So when you get one of these, make sure you Loctite everything down. It should only take an extra 5 minutes or so, but that's going to make your build just that little bit more reliable. Alrighty, so let's move on to the pros and the cons of the XJB. Well, con number one, I can't stand the name. Please give this thing a nice little cool name that I can, not only can I pronounce, but I can also remember, because honestly, calling it the HGLRC XJB-145 is a bit of a mouthful, a little bit too much. Some of the other pros, I like what it's going after. I think it's got a good market, especially moving into winter over in the US. It's going to be super powerful with these motors. Like, I think the 1407 is definitely a good size, especially because it can rock a 4S battery. Should have plenty of thrust. It's really, really lightweight as well, so that's going to be fantastic, especially for those people who are concerned under staying under the 250 gram mark. But the cons, well, I guess it's probably just the quality. That's the only one. Look, it's not going to carry a GoPro, so try not to advertise it as having a GoPro, and just double check the quality when you get yours. Don't fire it up until you go over it with a fine tooth comb. Check the screws are fine, check the solder joints are fine, and make sure your antenna's screwed down. So that's where I'd say this thing loses points, is probably on its quality. The other part too, look, if you're expecting bells and whistles and little fancy extras to get in your pack, you're not going to get any of this. I mean, the box this thing came with, it was looked like it shipped some, I don't know, 2-minute noodles or something like that. It was actually the worst packed box I've ever seen. It wasn't wrecked or anything like that, but there really wasn't too much in there, just some loose props ready to rock and roll. So you're really getting the bare bones experience when it comes to all the extras, but some people like that, because why pay? You know, it could be a pro or a con. Some people, you know, like all that stuff, and other people, they're like, look, I don't want to waste any money on any of that sort of jazz. Spend the money on the drone. That's where I want to be putting the dollars. But look, overall, I think this thing's going to be a lot of fun, especially to people in a smaller place. They've got their 5-inch build already. The components in here should be pretty good. Motors I'm a big fan of. We've just got to wait and see to the part 2. How does it fly? And if it flies well, we're definitely on to a winner. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my part 1 review of the XJB, and overall, look, I think this thing is going to be a lot of fun. I'm expecting it to rip, but definitely stay tuned for the part 2 video, because the proof is going to be in the pudding. Look, it's not perfect, the quality, like a 6 out of 10, you know, but I guess you're sort of getting what you're paying for, but I do think it's going to be a lot of fun, and because it comes pre-made, it's going to be good for those people. They've got a 5-inch, they might want to fly something a little bit smaller. I think it looks pretty cool. I'm not really a fan of the GoPro part, because that's going to absolutely kill it. Look, it might be able to carry a GoPro, but it is going to make it very, very sluggish, and that's not what these are designed for. They're designed to rip around in a tiny little space. So I'm super excited to fly this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, good components, the motor should absolutely rip, and you know, some nice ESCs as well. So definitely stay tuned for part 2, because that's where we'll take it out, rip it around, and have a lot of fun. We'll also hand it over to Grumpy Trev and see what he thinks as well. Also, I want to point out too, look, sometimes people ask me, Stuart, where's the flight footage? Why can't you put it all in one review? All that sort of jazz. And look, if it's a small micro drone that's easy to actually get some flight footage of, I can just fly it around my house or take it over to Trevor's or something like that. Look, I try to put it in, you know, a 1-part review. But if it's something that's a little bit bigger and needs a bit more of a space, if I've sort of got to go out somewhere, it's much easier to do it in 2-part reviews, because look, it's dependent on the weather. All that sort of jazz. Could be terrible winds, rains. You guys know the deal when you want to get out and fly. Sometimes the weather's just not your friend, so that's why these ones that I take out, rip it around in a bigger space, it's usually put in 2 parts. So stay tuned for the part 2 review. Subscribe for more FPV related content. Drop some comments down below. What do you think about the XJB, whatever it's called? The link's down below. And as always, happy flying. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page, because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAVfutures family, there's things like bonus velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.